Hi everyone, I'm John Medino and I was assigned to discuss the architectural design and the history of the Sydney Opera House. So my reference for my report are Wikipedia, Sydney Opera House website, or the www.sydneyoperahouse.com, and the last one is the timetoast.com, the timelines of the Sydney Opera House. First, we on the picture that you're going to see on my report is the Sydney Opera House, 1954 to 1973, by Jorn Utzon. Jorn Utzon is the Danish architect of the Sydney Opera House. He was born and raised in Copenhagen in Denmark. He won the competition to design the Sydney Opera House, and he was most notable for designing the Sydney Opera House in Australia and completed in 1973. His submission was one of 233 designs from 32 countries, many of them from the most famous architects of the time. And just to give you a brief background, that one of the judge to pick who picked the design of Jorn Utzon is Eero Saarinen. He described it as genius and declared he could not endorse any other choice but the design of Mr. Jorn Utzon, which is the architect of the Sydney Opera House. Okay, so let's start. The Sydney Opera House is a multi-venue performing arts center in Sydney, located on the banks of Sydney Harbour. It is widely regarded as one of the world's most famous and distinctive buildings and masterpiece of 20th century architecture. Okay, and Jorn Utzon claimed that the final design of the shell of the Sydney Opera House was inspired by peeling an orange. So this is what it looks like. If you can see this, the peeling of orange, this is actually the concept of the design of Mr. Jorn Utzon, which is the architect of the Sydney Opera House. The design of the Sydney Opera House was inspired by nature, its forms, functions, and colors. Utzon was influenced in his designs by bird wings, the shape and form of clouds, shells, walnuts, and palm trees. He looked upon nature for guidance when designing as nature over time and combined both efficiency and beauty hand in hand. So the roof structure of the opera house are called shells. The design of the shells was one of the most difficult aspects of the building design. Jorn Utzon claimed that the final design of the shell was inspired by peeling of an orange. It is said that the shells of the 14 separate roof form a spear if combined. And he was one of the pioneers in the use of prefabricated modular forms and designing for sustainability. So let's start the history of the Sydney Opera House. So in 1955, on September 13th, the contest for design of the Opera House was launched, which won by Jorn Utzon. And in 1958, the construction, after the demolition of the Fort Macquarie Tram Depot, construction of the Sydney Opera House was begun in March 1959. So this is the Opera House. As you can see on the picture. Okay, so in 1959, the phase one has begun, the podium construction. The construction of the upper podium would begin, which will house all the people, facilities, changing rooms, bars, and lobbies with an area of 1.8 hectares on 2 platforms at 8 and 15 meter above sea level. So in 1961, there was a delay in construction. Construction was delayed in 47 weeks to the original plan, while the budget was $3 million, which was not enough according to the government of the Sydney, Australia. So that is the cause of the delay ng construction. So 1962, podium and interior design. On August, the podium was completed, and a year later, the interior design was built. So the phase 2 was started. Ayan, yung ceiling na yung ginagawa sa Opera House, sa Sydney Opera House. For 2 years, various roofing alternative were experimented. The original idea of parabolic surfaces was dangerous since if one collapsed, the other would follow. Finally, the architect Uzon devised a great solution. The covers would be made using ribs of a sphere of radius 75 meter forming independent layers and would not successively collapse if one of them failed. Yung ribs, ito yung kung makita nyo yung mga new house architecture ngayon, architectural design, ito yung mga bars na talagang matibay yung ginagamit para sa mga ceilings and roofs. And in 1966, there was a conflict. After a long conflict with the New South Wales government, due to the construction cost, Utzon gives up on the project and Peter Hall, the new architect, takes over the design of the Sydney Opera House. So Utzon found himself in conflict with the new minister, attempting to rein in the escalating cost of the project. Huge began questioning Utzon's capability, his designs, his schedule, and cost estimates, refusing to pay running costs in 1966 after a final request from Utzon that plywood manufacturer Ralph Simons should be one of the suppliers for the roof structure was refused. Then that's the time he resigned from the current job, which is the architect of the Sydney Opera House, closed his Sydney office and vowed never to return to Australia. Then when Utzon left, the shells were almost complete and cost amounted to only $22.9 million. And in 1967, there is the phase 3 started, which is the interior. Ito yung loob ng Sydney Opera House. Peter Hall, which is the new architect, carried out the development of the interiors of the work, changing some of the concepts of Utzon, especially in the opera room, increasing the galleries and modifying the shape of the ceiling of the concert hall. And in 1973, the inauguration of the Sydney Opera House. It was opened on October 20, 1973 by Queen Isabel II. The opening ceremony consisted of fireworks and the performance by Symphony number 9 by Beethoven. And of course, during that year as well, in 1973, the final cost was showed of the Opera House was estimated at 3.5 million Australian dollars, but this increased to $120 million or equivalent to 4.5 billion Philippine pesos. And just to give you a glimpse or a background then, in 2007, during this year, it was named a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Yan, formally beautiful but functionally ugly. And in 2020 at present, it is currently a fabulous construction located in the city of Sydney, Australia. Sydney in Australia. It's design inspired by abstract art, in which opera, theater, piano, and symphony events are held, among other works of an artistic nature. It is 67-meter high, 27,000 tons of tiles, and more than 1 million pieces. So inside the Opera House, the performance venues and facilities, the Sydney Opera House includes a number of performance venues. Merong concert hall, merong Joan Sutherland Theater, merong drama theater, merong playhouse, studio, of course, the Udzon Room and recording studio. Meron din outdoor forecourt. Ito yung flexible open air venue with wide range of configuration options, including the possibility of utilizing the monumental steps as audience seating used for a range of community events and major outdoor performances. Other facilities of the Sydney Opera House is the building also houses a recording studio, retail shops, cafes, restaurants, bars, including the opera bar and opera kitchen. Guided tours are available, including a frequent tour of the front of house spaces and a daily backstage tour that takes visitors backstage to see areas normally reserved for performers and crew members. So that's all for my report. It's all about the architectural design and history of the Sydney Opera House in Australia. Thank you.